Is there such a thing as pure evil? How you answer this question might be one of the most important aspects of how you view the world. In its 3-season run, the show Cobra Kai has done an excellent job of addressing this question, and how it does so might surprise you. In this video, we will explore Cobra Kai, how it addresses the concept of pure evil, and how you can apply the ideas from the show to your life. I'm Jake, and this is the moral of the story. At some point, you have probably heard someone say that a person or group is pure evil, or something similar.
Pure evil.
It's a total cliche at this point. We are so used to this cliche that a one-dimensional villain is an essential part of many stories. This is an image that most people are familiar with, the over-the-top, cartoonish villain whose only goal is to perpetrate evil. Even in more serious stories, we often see villains with little to no motivation beyond pursuing a single goal by any means necessary. Sometimes, their goal just serves as an excuse for these characters to do what they are actually in the story to do: commit evil acts for the sake of evil.
With all 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist. I call that mercy.
What? You call that mercy? Why didn't you just snap more resources into existence? Probably should have snapped yourself better problem-solving skills. I'll level with you up front. In real life, there are no villains. There's no such thing as pure evil. At least, this is the case made by social psychologists such as Baumeister and Jonathan Haidt. More on them later. This is not to say that there is no such thing as evil. Most would agree evil exists, even if it may be difficult to define. We all have the capacity for evil, just not pure evil. In real life, how you identify the bad guy is ultimately just a matter of perspective. This is what Cobra Kai illustrates so wonderfully. If you were watching Cobra Kai, you probably know the most interesting part of the story is that the main character, Johnny Lawrence, was the villain in the original movie. We pick up with Johnny 30 years after his humiliating defeat to Danny LaRusso. Johnny has pretty much not moved on from the events of the Karate Kid, and is now a hard-drinking, out-of-touch degenerate who hasn't really learned much since the 80s.
My family and I just moved into 109.
Great, more immigrants.
Johnny, who is initially pretty selfish, eventually decides to teach karate to his neighbor Miguel, a high schooler who needs his help.
I'm gonna be your sensei.
Ultimately, this leads Johnny to reopen the Cobra Kai dojo. As Johnny attempts to rebuild the dojo, he is constantly met with resistance from Danny, who, as far as Johnny is concerned, is the story's antagonist. In response to Johnny's efforts, Danny also restarts his childhood dojo, Miyagi-Do, and seems hell-bent on stopping Johnny at all costs. The entire concept for the show came from a fan theory that described Johnny as the real protagonist of the original Karate Kid, and made some interesting points about how Danny was really the one provoking him. Johnny was merely standing up for himself.
Out of nowhere, the guy sucker punches. I did what any dude would do. I defended myself.
Each installment of the original Karate Kid franchise followed the framework of Danny squaring off against a rival who he had to defeat for one reason or another. Each time, Danny is cast as the obvious good guy, while his rival is unquestionably and totally the villain. Though Johnny is still far from perfect, Cobra Kai shows us that there is more to him than originally met the eye. One of the reasons that I started this channel is because stories can help us walk a mile in another person's shoes and help us understand things in a way that little else can. When we watch a movie, or a show, or read a book, we begin to see ourselves as the hero of the story, just as we are in our own lives. We see ourselves conquering our fears, unlocking our potential, and defeating the bad guy. But Cobra Kai goes beyond the dichotomy of good versus evil, and allows us to see through the eyes of the bad guy. Teaching Miguel the life lessons of karate and reopening the dojo seem like noble goals, but not from Danny's perspective. When Danny finds out that Cobra Kai is reopening, he sees it as a resurrection of the dojo that taught its students to be thugs and made his life a nightmare when he was a teenager. Naturally, Danny is inclined to fight against the rise of the bad guys from his childhood. As the show fills in the blanks to Johnny's past, he becomes someone we can understand and commiserate with. He no longer seems to be the one-dimensional villain he was in the original movie.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could take a karate class.
Karate? Ha! Don't you get in enough fights already at school?
Sid.
What? Look, the kid's a social reject. He doesn't have a single friend.
As events unfold, Johnny begins to change, questioning the lessons he learned when he was a student of the Cobra Kai dojo, further suggesting that Johnny may have never actually been the person we thought he was in The Karate Kid. At the All Valley tournament, which is basically a shot-for-shot remake of the final fight from The Karate Kid, in which Johnny used some controversial techniques, Johnny realizes he doesn't want his students to follow in his no mercy footsteps. It's at this point that Johnny begins to reconsider and redefine the philosophy of Cobra Kai.
I wasn't taught the difference between mercy and honor, and I paid the price for it. If I'm extra hard on you, it's only because you have the potential to be better than I ever was. You want that, don't you?
Unfortunately, unaware of the way that Johnny actually feels about the tournament, Danny characterizes the actions of Cobra Kai and Johnny as the typical villainy that they have always perpetrated.
You fought with honor, and he did.
Now Cobra Kai's gonna take over karate in the valley.
Yeah, right. Over my dead body.
It's clear at this point that neither Danny nor Johnny are the villain, as we see that Danny is capable of less than ideal behavior,
If you want to get technical, I kicked his face.
and Johnny is capable of growth.
I want Cobra Kai to be better. Kreese is gone for good.
This type of misunderstanding continues throughout the show, time and time again, Johnny and Danny seeing a different person than we see in each of them.
What's the matter with you? What, me? What, are you trying to kill that guy? You knew where Robbie was. God, I should have known better than to team up with a lunatic like you.
The phenomenon that Johnny and Danny are both experiencing is called naive realism. In his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, Jonathan Haidt references the findings of two researchers, Emily Pronin and Lee Ross, who coined the term. Naive realism is essentially the belief that we see the world clearly while others do not. Or as Haidt puts it, I'm right, you're biased. This is something that the mind has evolved to do naturally. It is our default setting to see our side as pure virtue and theirs as pure vice. Haidt explains how these default settings were necessary for our early human ancestors, but no longer serve their original purpose, and now do more harm than good. And this thinking gets even more dangerous when it escalates from person versus person to group versus group. As the two dojos grow, it's easy to see how the underlying conflicts and tensions between them are continuously increasing as a reflection of their sensei's sentiments. To understand why this happens, it's important to understand what Haidt identifies as the four attributes of evil: greed or ambition, sadism, high self-esteem, and moral idealism. According to Haidt, in the grand scheme of things, greed or ambition and sadism account for only a small portion of violence. The biggest causes come from some things that are usually good, but can have a dark side: high self-esteem and moral idealism. Haidt takes this a step further and explains, threatened self-esteem accounts for a large portion of violence at the individual level, but to really get mass atrocity going, you need idealism. This is seen time and time again in the show. Each dojo thinks that they are doing the right things and putting an end to the wrongdoing of the other. It becomes necessary for them to find increasingly more ridiculous ways to interpret what the other group is doing as some kind of evil in order to maintain the myth.
They're literally using Miguel as their poster child.
They think they can get away with that?
They won't.
I would argue that in addition to the four attributes of evil that Haidt described, there is one more highlighted in the show: unnecessary self-preservation. The idea of kill or be killed is what brings tension between the groups to a fever pitch, and is infused into the Cobra Kai dojo courtesy of the real villain, John Kreese. But the show even finds a way to make Kreese a sympathetic character when you see how he was mistreated during the war, and explains why he sees the world as a kill or be killed fight to the death.
I tried to tell you that it was kill or be killed out here, but you couldn't shed your humanity.
This glimpse into Kreese's past makes it understandable how anyone might turn into Kreese after experiencing what he did.
I didn't follow your lessons. Come on! I won't make that mistake again. Kreese! No mercy. Kreese!
The understanding that everyone, even people like Kreese, have a sympathetic backstory is the key to diffusing naive realism and the myth of pure evil. We all have the capacity for good and bad within us. No one person or group is all good or all bad, but it can be our belief that we are good and that others are bad that is the real template for evil. As Roy Baumeister says in his book, Evil: Inside Human Violence and Cruelty, the myth of pure evil depicts innocent victims fighting against gratuitously wicked, sadistic enemies. The myth encourages people to believe that they are good and will remain good no matter what, even if they perpetuate severe harm on their opponents. Thus, the myth of pure evil confers a kind of moral immunity on the people who believe in it. Belief in the myth is itself one recipe for evil, because it allows people to justify violent and oppressive actions. It allows evil to masquerade as good. The way that we can maximize our ability to see through the myth of pure evil is to train the mind to stop judging as incessantly as it does by default, and to stop it from seeing us as purely righteous. Jonathan Haidt suggests the best way for us to put this into practice in our own lives is to put ourselves on a mission to find the log in our own eye. In situations of conflict, we need to put ourselves on a quest to see that there is more than one side to the story.
I know, there's two.
No, there's three. There's your side, and then there is the truth. And the truth is, you guys are more alike than you want to admit.
I guess it's possible. Some small part of all of this is my fault.
Yeah.
Me too.
Like Johnny and Danny, if we can find any way that we are at fault for something in the situation, we can break the illusion of pure righteousness that we have by default. You can still believe you are right and the other person is wrong, but if you can move to believing that you are mostly right and that your opponent is mostly wrong, you have the basis for an effective and non-humiliating apology.
Look, man, I'm sorry. For all of it.
Cobra Kai shows us that it is not some innate qualities, but our choices that define us. If we can push through the pain of finding fault within ourselves, we are almost instantly rewarded with a positive feeling, a mixture of pleasure and pride. It is the pleasure of taking responsibility for your own behavior. It is the feeling of honor.
I wasn't taught the difference between mercy and honor, and I paid the price for it. If I'm extra hard on you, it's only because you have the potential to be better than I ever was. You want that, don't you? I'm sorry.
Miguel's choice and sacrifice are so important here. It's because of his decision to see through the myth of pure evil and remove himself from the conflict that the groups are ultimately able to find resolution at the end of Season 3. So, the moral of the story? The world and the people in it are not one-dimensional. There is no such thing as pure evil. Practice being honorable in your life by taking responsibility for yourself and your choices. If others see your example of honor, it could turn villains into allies. So the only question left is...
Ready? Let's begin!
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I had a great time making this video, and I think Cobra Kai comes to us at a time where it's really important to internalize this lesson. With everything going on in the world, being able to see through the myth of pure evil is more important than ever. So if you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. And please consider subscribing. It'll really help me make more videos. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can follow the link to the Patreon page. It's in the description below. Leave a comment if there's any other practical philosophies that you'd like to explore through film or story. And I'll see you guys in the next one.